Hello and welcome to our presentation today on parent counseling and training as a related service under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. My name is Virginia Madoran. I'm an education consultant for deaf and hard of hearing with the Exceptional Children Division of the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. I'm a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing by training, and I am also a certified listening and spoken language specialist. With me today is Debra Pickens.
Hello, my name is Debra Pickens, and I'm a parent educator and co-director of the North Carolina Deafblind Project for Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, the Parent Training and Information Center in North Carolina. And I also have a son, 24-year-old son with deaf blindness.
Thank you, Deborah. This presentation was created in order to provide guidance and clarification on the implementation of parent counseling and training as a related service for students with disabilities in North Carolina. In order to highlight parent counseling and training as a related service, I would like to first define it. In understanding what parent counseling and training is, it is beneficial to begin with what it is not, as this seems to be a very common misconception among providers in the field. Parent counseling and training is a different related service than that of counseling. IDEA's list of related services includes multiple options for counseling services, including counseling, parent counseling and training, and rehabilitation counseling. These are defined separately in IDEA and are different from one another. Parent counseling and training is not to be confused with other forms of counseling that might be offered as a related service. So what is parent counseling and training? Well, as many of you probably know, this is a valuable related service that can help parents enhance the vital role they play in the lives of their children. It is intended to benefit the student by helping them to make greater gains in meeting their IEP goals and objectives through learning supports both at school and at home. It means assisting parents in understanding the special needs of their child, providing parents with information about child development, and helping parents to acquire the necessary skills that will allow them to support the implementation of their child's IEP. The first two parts of this definition are long-standing in IDEA. The last part, regarding helping parents acquire the necessary skills that will allow them to support the implementation of their child's IEP, was added in IDEA 97 to recognize the more active role of parents as participants in the education of their child, and is retained in IDEA 2004. As with all related services, parent counseling and training would be provided if a child's IEP team determines that it is necessary for the child to receive FAPE and access his or her IEP. Generally, the term counseling means providing information and support, while the term training focuses on developing skills. Therefore, we can think of this service as comparable in some instances to parent coaching. Parent coaching is an evidence-based, interactive, and developmental process that facilitates adult learning and competencies. And we know that parent coaching has multiple potential benefits for parents and families of students with disabilities. We'll talk more about these benefits further in the presentation. However, just note that this service is used to assist parents in acquiring skills to support the implementation of the child's IEP. And this includes teaching them about their child's disability, what typical development might look like, and how to work on the skills necessary to make growth towards their child's IEP goals. For those families who have previously participated in early intervention, this may look like a continuation of services and support to parents or families. For children receiving services under Part C, the goal is to provide interventions through consultation and education with families in order to enhance their capacity to support the development of their children within the context of their everyday lives. Parent training is therefore a core element of Part C service delivery and not a separate and related service as identified under Part D of IDEA. In our exploration of this related service, we gathered data on its use in our state of North Carolina. The data that you see here was gathered in May of 2020. At that time, less than 20 students in North Carolina received parent counseling and training as a related service, 19 to be exact. As of September 2020, only 15 students in North Carolina had this service. And of those 15 students, 9 of them were labeled either hearing impaired, deaf, or deaf-blind, which equates to roughly 60% of those receiving the service. Parent coaching has been a known practice with exponential benefit in the field of hearing loss for many years. However, as you can see, it's still not used regularly in our schools, even for students with hearing loss. This data tells us that parent counseling and training is a likely underutilized tool for providing quality instruction to students with disabilities and for supporting their families. Our work thus far has been focused on informing service providers in North Carolina of the IEP team's necessary consideration of its use as a related service. We plan to continue to monitor the implementation of parent counseling and training in our state and provide continued technical assistance and professional development on this topic. Next, we'd like to share with you the stories of a few students in North Carolina who have parent counseling and training as a related service and the impact this service has had for them. We will begin with Tony. Tony is a high school senior in North Carolina, diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at age 4 after moving here from another state. Tony's mother shares that although the family suspected a diagnosis of autism before age 4, they were not ready to hear it officially until much later. Tony began receiving speech services at age 2 due to delays with spoken language, and at 2.5, his therapist confirmed there might be a need for further evaluation and services. He was evaluated around his 3rd birthday and soon began attending a part-day preschool setting with the local school system. Later, he moved into a full-day blended setting where he received services for speech therapy, occupational therapy, and spent his days with a certified BK teacher. During his time in preschool, Tony's IEP team determined that parent counseling and training was required 1 time per week for Tony's family to better understand his special needs and development, and to help them acquire the necessary skills that would allow them to support the implementation of his IEP. His parents began meeting weekly with service providers, and these services continued until early elementary school, when the IEP team, including Tony's parents, determined that parent counseling and training was no longer needed because they had the skills necessary to allow them to support the implementation of Tony's IEP. Following the removal of parent counseling and training as a related service, Tony's family continued to implement many of the skills they had learned through this service, and Tony continued to show progress in all areas. In middle school, he was able to begin placement in a co-taught resource setting, and this placement continued in high school. As a high school senior, Tony has shown strong interests in computer technology and engineering, and he's focusing on this pathway during his high school studies. For his future, his mother states he doesn't know exactly what he wants to do yet, and she knows that his pathway will be different than that of his brother and other same-age peers, but she states, "He just doesn't know yet, and that's okay. I don't know either, but we will figure it out together." When asked about the impact of parent counseling and training, Tony's mother shared the following quote: "Preschool was a time of such great uncertainty and anxiety for me as his mom. And having ongoing communication with his teacher, his SLP, and OT was extremely helpful, not only in giving me the tools and resources to work with him, but also in shaping the way that I saw him and his education. I think that as a parent of a young child who is not meeting a milestone, you often have nowhere to look for guidance except to maybe your pediatrician or other parents. And since they are usually basing opinions on typically developing children, it can make you feel like you're facing huge obstacles. In working with his teacher and with everyone else at the school, the communication was always so positive and strengths-based that I felt like maybe it was all going to be okay. I learned to break it all down into small tasks where there could be incremental growth that I could see and be proud of. And because I felt like part of the team, it empowered me to provide teachers with my input on things. And I think that showed his teachers that I was invested in collaborating, which empowered them to communicate more with me about things I could do with him at home. There was a cycle of trust and respect that I believe his teacher started with us in preschool. Let's consider another example. This is Miguel. Miguel was born with a profound bilateral sensory neural hearing loss to a Spanish speaking family with no known history of hearing loss. He received bilateral hearing aids, which were never worn, and at 1 year of age, he received a cochlear implant. However, his family had continued difficulty in ensuring that he wore it daily. He underwent 3 years of early intervention with little to no progress. Upon entering preschool at age 3, he had no known vocabulary or language. Miguel was frustrated, and his family was frustrated too. Miguel's preschool team determined that parent counseling and training was necessary to ensure parent education and home follow-up. Miguel, who had typical cognition, was placed in a blended preschool classroom, receiving multiple hours of service per day, in addition to parent counseling and training. If I told you that parent coaching with Miguel's family was easy, I would be lying. They came to every single session. However, his mother usually refused to participate, and often his siblings were the only ones to speak during the session, and his mother left some sessions in tears. The service provider working with his family had worked diligently for several years in understanding them. Their parent counseling and training sessions, although at times challenging, allowed his mother and his teacher to bond. His mother began to feel safer and more easily expressed her feelings of grief surrounding Miguel's diagnosis. After another 2 years of listening and spoken language instruction with very little progress, Miguel's team discussed a shift into a manual communication modality at the recommendation of his teacher and his personal audiologist. When the recommendation to change communication modalities was made, Miguel's mother was slightly apprehensive, but she felt confident in her trust with his teacher. They decided together that it was time for a change, and with the support of his teacher, his mother began learning sign language. Let's fast forward a few months. For the first time in 5 years, Miguel began using language to communicate. His mother, reluctant to practice with him in front of the teacher, asked for resources for home. Miguel's team created an online sign language dictionary for the family. They sent books home in Spanish. They taught the family how to read to him using sign language, and they had weekly vocabulary sessions in sign language. It was never truly clear how much Miguel's mother learned from these sessions, but Miguel was finally making fast progress, so the team knew they were on the right track. Miguel was set to transition to kindergarten, and his mother expressed her concern, so the team determined that he continued to need his weekly parent counseling and training sessions for success. Where's Miguel now? Well, Miguel entered kindergarten last fall during a pandemic and began remote instruction with a brand new teacher. He is still significantly behind his typically developing peers in relation to language development. However, his gap is lessening. He's participating in therapy sessions with minimal emotional stress. And even more noticeably, something has shifted with his mother. She attended and participated in every single online session. She communicated with him via sign language and her voice. She commanded his attention by using the strategies she had learned during previous sessions. And now, Miguel is actively participating in all of his settings. Although at times frustrated, as we all can be, he uses language to communicate his frustration. He has been witness signing with his sisters and parents, and his family is freely communicating back with him. Not every story of parent counseling and training is the same, and we know that how parents respond to their child very often depends on where that parent is in the grief cycle. What we do know, however, is that parent counseling and training is an opportunity to form a partnership with a family. It's an opportunity to educate, inspire, and empower, and it can have profound and meaningful impact on families who need support. We're now going to hear Debra's story firsthand. Debra?
Thank you, Virginia. My story starts when I was a child. Both of my parents were blind. My father was deafblind, born with Norris disease, which is a genetic disease that runs throughout the family. When my father got sick and had to go in the hospital, he was pretty much completely deaf and blind, and we could not communicate with him. And I started pecking on the Braille writer to try to Braille a letter to him to let him know what was going on from a medical standpoint. I knew then that I needed to learn Braille. When Billy was born, I decided to go to school online to learn Braille, to learn how to read and to write Braille, and I'm glad I did. Although Billy, he started learning Braille really in pre-K, and he was actually started in a separate setting initially, but by the time he got to middle school, he was mainstream in general education. So the communication piece is very critical. And with Billy, he learned by using the Braille Apex, which I have yet to learn. Assistive technology is so critical and it changes on a regular basis. But for a child with deaf blindness, if they're on the deaf blind census, they can receive some assistive technology equipment through what's called the I Can Connect program. So Billy has, when he was in middle school, I mean, he had to write a letter to his teachers to let them know his condition and what he needed in order to be successful, all the accommodations. But when he got to high school, we found that even though knowing that he wanted to go on to a 4-year college, he was still using the Braille Apex. And so we had to aggressively insert assistive technology goals within his IEP, Individualized Education Program, in order to teach him. He knows the keyboard. He knew the keyboard back in high school, but he needed to be able to communicate with his professors using the screen reader. And he had been introduced to JAWS, and now he has a laptop with JAWS on it, although still even today, there are some accessibility issues with really everything that he uses, but he knows how to get around it and to make it work. And so where's Billy now? Billy graduated from UNC Charlotte with a major in communications and a minor in journalism. And he's working at Exceptional Children's Assistance Center as the Youth Outreach Coordinator, where he continues to use his laptop with the JAWS screen reader, his Braille Apex, and he has a Braille Focus. So the importance of communication, the importance of parent counseling, we can't emphasize that enough, because had I known that I could have put that in his IEP and not paid thousands of dollars to go to school, then I would have taken advantage of that option as well. Jenny?
Thank you, Deborah. In addition to the examples that we've discussed so far, parent counseling and training can be used to address a variety of needs, including behavior intervention strategies, social and emotional learning, progressive sensory losses in which a student is losing hearing or vision, transition times when the families and students may need individualized specific support on a certain skill or goal area, and specific academic skill development, among others. Decisions on which areas to target should be data-driven and student-specific. However, teams should consider how parent counseling and training might facilitate access to the student's IEP and FAPE. Next, we'll discuss the ins and outs of implementing a positive system of support for these students. Let's discuss just the tip of the iceberg of what we know about parent coaching and collaboration through research. Research shows better outcomes for children in early intervention programs when a family-centered approach is used that is based on family support principles, is focused on the child's interests and assets, supports and empowers parents in their role as the child's primary care provider, addresses the priorities of the family, and implements a holistic approach with each child and family. Brown, 2012, found that coaching strategies that provided opportunities for an active parent role, so guided practice with feedback and observation, were associated with higher parent implementation of intervention strategies. Responsive parent communication strategies yielded stronger relationships with child communication than modeling alone, and parent implemented communication intervention focused on building parents' capacity through a collaborative coaching process in family guided routines, which shows promise for enhanced parent and child outcomes. In most family based early intervention models, the practitioner disavows the expert position simply because the practitioner is not the agent of change. Instead, the parent is the agent of change, and it is the job of the practitioner to enable the parent to act on that perspective. The use of parent counseling and training in a school setting offers a continuation of this model. When parents and educators are able to work together in a collaborative partnership, positive student outcomes result, and we see that throughout the research. Although little emphasis has been placed on informing parents about evidence based practices, parents should play an important role in determining which and how evidence based practices should be used with their children. This is a parental right, but also with their involvement, we can maximize the effectiveness of evidence based practices. In a recent article, Cook et al. Notes that while evidence based special education is effective, it can only truly be effective with the additional element of parent collaboration. Research tells us over and over that parents need to play a prominent role in order to obtain best outcomes for our students. We can see, even from these few sources of research, that parent coaching, including parent counseling and training, has long term positive effects on our students with disabilities and their families. And this is but the tip of the iceberg. As you've seen from research, the potential benefits of teaching a parent or a family more about their child really are endless. But here we'll discuss more in depth some of the key potential benefits that can arise from parent counseling and training as a related service. Families of students with disabilities receiving this service can potentially gain a better understanding of their child's disability and overall development, which can help families know what to expect during the growth and development of their child. It can also help them set realistic goals as they understand both what is age appropriate and what is within the potential for their individual student. In turn, this enables parents to be better informed members of the IEP team. It makes them equal players, and it also facilitates the productivity of IEP meetings. Parents who come to the table knowing what to expect are more comfortable and less likely to be unnecessarily stressed or defensive when speaking. Families who are regularly learning about their child's disability and how to best support them tend to experience decreased stress and more self confidence. They know what to do with their child to be successful, and they are integrated into the team so much so that even if they don't know what to do, they know exactly who to ask. They can, in turn, empowered in their knowledge, help other parents who have children with similar experiences. We know that for many of our parents, the grief cycle can be a significant hurdle to overcome, so having this parental support is really priceless. We've already talked a bit about IEP meetings, but we have seen that parents receiving this service are better able to participate in these meetings, and many tend to need less explanation surrounding goal progress as they have been involved in the process all along. Because they work with their child regularly, they know how their child performs and what skills remain challenging. They are also critical sources of information on skill carryover and help inform progress monitoring. All of these benefits combine to potentially create more productive meetings with equally knowledgeable team members who can facilitate faster progress on skill acquisition. So, how do teams determine that these services are needed? Well, parent counseling and training should be considered as a related service if the IEP team, including the parents as an integral part of the team, determine that these services are required to assist the child to benefit from special education. Decisions related to the necessity of this service are individual to the student. However, teams should be considering the following questions when discussing the potential need for this service. Is there data to suggest that the parent or family may need further support in understanding the special needs of their child? Do the parents or family need information or assistance in acquiring the necessary skills that would allow them to support the implementation of the child's IEP? How would carryover of these skills at home affect progress skill development? And is the parent or family asking for further support? Is the team already providing support to the parent or family in relation to skill development? And if so, is this support appropriately documented on the student's IEP? And lastly, is there a similar support already available via other community resources or agencies? All just things to consider. As the team works through these questions together, they can consider whether or not the use of parent counseling and training as a related service is necessary in order to address the individual needs of the student and provide a free and appropriate public education. The implementation of parent counseling and training as a related service may not be well known to all service providers, so we'll discuss some of those details now. If an IEP team determines that parent counseling and training must be provided in order for a student with a disability to benefit from special education, the related service must be described in the student's IEP and provided by the school district. Making decisions about how often a related service will be provided and where and by which discipline is also a function of the IEP team. Parents can initiate the process by requesting information, referral, or assistance in developing skills that will allow them to support the implementation of their child's IEP. Remember, the purpose of parent counseling and training is to assist the parents in understanding the special needs of their child, providing them with information about child development, and helping them to acquire skills to support the implementation of their child's IEP. And therefore, all skills addressed during this service should be IEP related, and decisions should be made in partnership with parents. Providers of parent counseling and training can include special education staff like teachers, speech language pathologists, audiologists, occupational therapists, administrators, and others. It might also include school counselors, psychologists, social workers, or nurses when appropriate. Like other related services included on the IEP, school districts may not charge parents of eligible students with disabilities for the costs of providing this service. The IEP team is intended to work collaboratively, with parents functioning as equal partners in the development and implementation of the IEP. Therefore, parent counseling and training as a related service should not be imposed or forced upon parents by school personnel. A log of all efforts to provide parent counseling and training should be kept for future reference as needed. Parent counseling and training services should be focused on student-specific goals and may include examples such as education regarding the student's specific disability, identification of community resources, collaboration in regards to the implementation of the child's IEP, and instruction and demonstration of techniques used in school to promote consistent use in the home or outside of school. Services should be focused on supporting specific student goals, and while most often the services are provided face to face, they could be provided through other methods such as phone or written lessons if appropriate or needed in order for the family to access these services. Next, we'll hear from Debra on an additional source of parent education available to families in North Carolina.
Thank you, Jenny. And speaking of collaboration, we do collaborate closely with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. ECAC is the North Carolina's Parent Training Center, and we cover all 100 counties in North Carolina. All of our parent educators have a child with special needs, and we provide individualized assistance around special education through telephone calls, webinars, attend IEP meetings, and also we do a lot of research and delivering resources to the parents. In other ways, the other projects that we collaborate with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction on are the North Carolina Deafblind Project, the North Carolina State Improvement Project, the North Carolina Infant Toddler Program, and then we also have a LENS grant, Learning for Equity and Network for Solutions. And ECAC, we've been around for over 30 years. So we're very educated in terms of how to educate and empower parents that have children with special needs.
Thank you,
Jenny?
Debra. We are very thankful for that collaboration. All right, so in conclusion, the sustaining factor that keeps many of us tied to this field is a passion for working with students with disabilities. We are inspired by their stories and impacted by their perseverance, and perhaps in listening to this today, you even had a particular student or situation in mind. It's our hope that providing this information, along with individualized technical assistance to the service providers in our state, we will see higher levels of implementation of this related service, which in turn will have a direct impact on student outcomes. We have already seen strong interest from those in the field in response to this work. This work serves as a welcome reminder that teamwork and collaboration are critical for obtaining the best possible outcomes for students with disabilities. We thank you for your participation today, and we hope this information was helpful in learning more about the use of parent counseling and training as a related service.